are going over gap and the gain, and we are doing chapters 4, 5, and 6, which will conclude the book. Who loved the last 3 chapters?
I love
I
chapter
did.
5. I'll text you that. Love chapter 5. Listen to it 3 times.
I know, I was just re-listening to it myself. I am like literally, I think this might be my favorite book we've read so far. And he mentioned like 3 other books in the last couple chapters that I've jotted down. So those will probably be my next picks, to be honest. It was what did you say, David?
That was, I was looking at the next book, sorry.
Oh, you were looking at your next book?
Yeah, I was trying to figure out I'm being practical. Ignore me.
You're cutting out. Say it again.
Ignore me.
Oh, totally. Totally. Awesome. All right. Well, chapter 4, always measure backwards, increase your hope and resilience. So do you guys do this? Do you ever look backwards? In this chapter, he talks a lot about, I don't know if it was this chapter or the next one, but I know he starts talking a lot about journaling, and he kind of takes us through, and I think this is actually the second book that takes us through the 4 stages of understanding a new skill. I can't remember what the first book was, and I don't know if he uses the first words, but he talks about unconscious ignorance evolving into conscious competence, and kind of takes you through the 4 steps there. He encourages you to keep a journal, and kind of talks a little bit about how living in the gain is
Chapter 9, investor lesson number 9. How can you
Sorry.
That's okay, you sound like me. Is a huge shift in raising your kids, right? So he kind of goes into a little bit in chapter 4 about what it talks about living in the gain and how that really affects the people under your roof, mainly the children under your roof. So let's kind of jump right in. Let's talk about a little bit about what it looks like to be in the gain, looking in your past and actually measuring those things, and a little bit about what burnout looks like. So have you guys ever been in a situation where you're really living in the gap instead of the gain, and you're like 100% in burnout mode and you're like, I'm done?
Yeah, so surprisingly enough, so I've actually worked with enough like counselors over the years, and so a habit that they wanted me to have is like essentially if I get into the gap, it's nice to have a name for it now. If I get into the gap at all, my habit is to actually like I'll pull out my I have like a journal app on my phone that I've had for like the past 7 years. You know, and so that's kind of I guess that's been a nice habit over the years. And honestly, I think there was a couple of things in here that I want to update one of mine coming up, but I'll talk about that in a minute. I might be jumping ahead.
For me, like, and I may have said this last week, but like with my business, like as we're growing and things are happening, it's not happening at the speed that I want it to. Like I'm like pissed off because why am I not this? Why am I not that? And my wife has to pull me aside and say, this is where you were a year ago. Like, and look at how far we've come. Like last year was a perfect example. I think all of us got our butts kicked in real estate last year, especially the second half, right? And nobody hit their numbers. Nobody, and it really pissed me off and whatever. And my wife's like, look at what you did last year, though. You know what I mean? It's like, and so, you know, we have to live in that game. But for me, I'm thankful that I have somebody who's going to hold me accountable to that. You know what I mean? And say, stop, butthead. Look backwards and look at where you were and where you are now.
I love that your wife calls you a butthead.
Yeah.
Well, and that's pretty impressive, Steve. She didn't even read the book, so for her too.
Right. Well, I mean, I have to do that with her too. I mean, she's stuck with the kids a lot, so I had to pull her off the ledge.
Awesome. Natalie, any comments on what burnout equates as far as in your life, and kind of how this may transpire into a better situation moving forward with evaluating how you're doing in business and that kind of stuff? We kind of talked a little bit about this coaching yesterday.
Yes, of like hitting that restart button constantly of, oh my gosh, what am I doing right? What am I doing wrong? And why do I feel like I'm starting over each day or each week? And so I definitely, for me reading this book, I kind of started it last week, a week ago. And so I've read all the chapters within the week. So they all kind of merged together. And what I really found was, the beginning chapters were reflected more where I was in my past, where there was some darker days of trying to survive, and those chapters would have been really good for me back then. And as the book progressed, I found that each chapter kind of got to a new level that, hey, okay, maybe you don't have to be level 0 right now, depressed and dying. But as it progressed, I found that I was, relating more to the book. And in this chapter, I definitely felt it was great guidance for being a parent, and that was a good analogy that I could relate to how do I treat my child, but then how do I treat my spouse, and then also my colleagues and buyers and sellers out there, and helping them in their journeys. And so it was neat. I loved reading the book because it allowed me to reflect. A lot of times you kind of start to think about other things in your life and you get distracted from the book, but the book constantly made me think about how I can relate my life to the book.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. For me, this part of the book, I mean, it was right there in the beginning. It was another definition, right? Like, why am I so frustrated? I mean, I'm trying to do three major things right now. I'm trying to grow production, build a team, trying to learn how to flip houses, and trying to recruit agents. And I think when I read this, I just stopped because I think I hit that wall a little bit last week. I was like, Jesus Christ. I feel like I take 4 steps forward and then 7 steps backwards and then 3 steps forward. And I think remembering to look at the gain, and looking backwards, he gave it an acronym, always look at, what was it? What was his? It's written down in here somewhere. I have like 900 pages of notes. These are such good chapters.
Wow.
But I really liked the whole, like, always look backwards, right? Consistently look backwards. Because when you focus on your problems, it creates that burnout. And so, Steve, you kind of touched on my next topic, accountability partners. So as I was reading this, I actually wrote down accountability partner at the top of my page. And then a few sentences later, he goes in and says, record your gains. So accountability partners, let's talk about those a little bit and what that looks like in your life. Steve, it sounds like you use your wife as your accountability partner. Do you actually have a system to have an accountability partner? And if yes, what does that system look like? And if no, how is that going to change your life? And is that something you're willing to implement?
No, I need an accountability partner. I know I need an accountability partner. They should probably, in theory, should be somebody who's more in real estate, just so that way, because they'll hold me accountable to the, I could BS my wife because my wife doesn't know everything about the you know what I mean? Like, it's like the inner workings of the real estate world or whatever. But a real estate person's like knows you're full of crap on certain things.
Well, you can get in the gap if she doesn't know the ins and outs, and maybe not realize you're in the gap. So I think that's a good point.
Right. So, I mean, chapter 5, and then not to jump ahead, but when he talks about doing the journaling and doing the 3 wins and whatever and using that. So that's my goal, is to find an accountability partner that I can do that with. Okay. Send the 3 and then, and do that every day. But I mean, we can make up all kinds of stories in our brains. We can all make up our own. So having accountability partners, like, you have to have one that will just call you out on your BS, So we need to have one.
I totally agree. I just thought it was crazy. I was like, I need an accountability partner. Record your gains and get an accountability partner.
Well, it was neat because the 2 terms, they said somebody you trust and respect. And so it's interesting how you kind of quickly think through your mind of people that you might know and trust, but do you respect their opinions, or vice versa? You respect their opinions, but do you know and trust them? And so to try to filter your mind and your people of who would qualify for a good accountability partner, and then you got to make them read this book.
So I have 2 unofficial accountability partners. My fiance being one, and then Laura being the other. So I'll say unofficial because I think we've kind of taken a break from it for a little bit, but it's been like I don't know, Laura, I'm not gonna lie, I kind of miss it.
I do too. As I was reading the chapters, I was thinking about it a good bit, and I thought to myself, okay, how do we make this? And you start talking about the accountability partner in the book before he makes you go back. I think it's 10 years, 5 years, 1 year, and 6 months, and 3 months or something. I can't remember what the shorter time frames were. But I was thinking to myself a little bit about what Steve was saying, like, okay,
Mhm.
Craig is awesome, and he's literally my biggest cheerleader in the whole world, but is sharing these goals, like, do you separate it, right? Do I have like the four of us maybe every night, but I had a problem with that. Text your accountability partner every night, get off your phone 30 minutes early, and 30 minutes before you go to bed, I was like, what the fuck? How do I do so I was struggling a little bit there. But I thought, okay, maybe we could come up with maybe the group does one, we could share our 3 and 3 on the group text. But I also thought, well, is it always going to only be real estate that we focus on? Right? So bringing your spouse in may be something that you want to do. But I think that, like, for me, I'm willing to try it out on the group, at least with the 3 and 3, right? What are your 3 positives for the day? What are your 3 goals for tomorrow? And then I thought about kind of maybe looking at Craig for the rest of it as far as life goes. So I would encourage you guys to kind of look at that. Now, as we start always measure backwards, A and B. I told you I wrote that damn thing down. Now as we start, my notes kind of ran a little bit together. I don't know if I have a good starting point on where the chapters changed in this one, but they're kind of taking us into as he's starting to get you guys to look backwards. Did anybody do that activity for one of the time frames, for all of the time frames? Did you guys do any or all of that activity?
20 to 23, I got engaged, started a YouTube channel, flipped 3 houses, bought a house with my fiance, hired a bunch of assistants, and started a couple of businesses.
Right? That's very, very, very amazing. So what do you think internally your day would end like if we all sat down and actually did this today? Like what do you think the end of your day would look like, and how would that prep you for tomorrow?
So you want to go first, Steve?
I was just gonna say, I mean, like he says in the book, if you end the day with wins, focus tomorrow on wins, end the day with wins, focus tomorrow on wins. Like at the end of the day, you have 3 wins. At the end of the week, you have 21 wins. And it's always about wins, 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 wins. I mean, it's going to keep you pointed in the right direction, and that's the thing. I mean, and so the last couple of nights I've really been focused on, I have an alarm on my phone, 9:45, phone's done. And like, so I set the alarm, whatever, 9:45, and the phone's done. And it's hard because I hear bzz, 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 you know what I mean? So I'll look on my watch to see. But it's not LEDs to take that. But I've been journaling. I've been doing like a little crossword puzzle thing or whatever. So it's like just trying to get my mind mellow. But last couple of nights, because like on my Fitbit, you can see when you get the REM sleep or whatever. And like my REM sleep's been better the last couple of nights since doing that.
So you're seeing it. Is this an activity you think you'll go back and do, Steve?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So honestly, one of the things he talked about in chapter 5, like that activity, about the 3 games every night. So it actually reminds me of another one that I used to do, and I stopped doing it because it was too much. And I think he kind of talked about it in the book. Like the guy was saying, I used to have all these very complex night routines. And one of the ones I had worked really well, but it was also complex. It was like you had to think of 10 people you would forgive, 10 things or 10 games. So basically the exact same thing, but 10. And then 10 things that you loved about yourself to kind of get yourself into the mindset of, kind of getting out of the gap and just staying in the game as a habit. But doing 10 every night was kind of hard. And after doing it for like 30 days, you can't think of people after 5. Like, well, who else do I have here? But this, like the simplification of it, kind of makes it that much. It kind of gives me permission to kind of pull it back and kind of scale it to myself. And it could just be something like, 3 of each every night. And so I think what it does is it kind of puts you in that habit. So then, like he says, when a COVID comes around, or, a shitting closing comes, or just whenever something happens, it's like, okay, well, I won't get lost in the gap because you're so in the habit of staying in the game. It kind of makes you move differently every day.
Natalie, anything to add?
Well, I thought it was interesting how he said, it's okay to go into the gap too. And that even the author of the book that's professional at this, he goes in there, several times a day, and just it's a good awareness though of knowing where you're at. And, if you're kind of just floating through life or whatever, it's hard to really assess that, but I love that applying your goals and knowing what your goals are and reviewing them each day. You can actually know, okay, when are you making progress on them versus you're just, living. And so I appreciate that he kind of gave us permission to go there, but just to know that when you are there, that you got to get yourself out, and it's okay to be there too.
Right. Well, I think permission's
Right.
important, right? I think a lot of times we tend to beat ourselves up because we're told, oh, you should do X. Well, if we don't do X, where does our mind go? Right? Straight to the gap. And it's not necessarily a bad thing or a good thing if you do or don't do X. It just may take you a little longer to get to your goal if you don't do it. Right. And so he talks about no negative towards my past. Wow, is that hard? Like, I started doing this exercise a little bit, and I didn't really start writing anything down. I want to sit down and actually take the time when I'm not listening to him and to the book. And I want to take the time to actually go back through, as much as I can and write it all down. And I think I may actually use where I was taking notes. Like, I think I'm going to have a specific, that's my family. Got a notebook with my family on it because I love them to take my notes for my books. But I actually think I'm going to start using this as a journal. Because for me, looking at my past and not looking at it negatively, sometimes that's really hard, right? I mean, my divorce is now, how old is Tristan? He's 15. My divorce is now 13 years old, almost 14 years old, but it still feels negative. And I think that when I look back at stuff like that, and then I come back to present day, I think that negativity tends to follow me. Right? Is Craig going to treat me the same way Brian treated me? Is Craig going to do the same things that Brian did to me? And it affects me negatively. So that for me was like a huge, huge, huge eye-opening that when we do go backwards, like, don't look at the negative. Figure out a way to say it was positive, right? Yes, I did get a divorce 14 years ago. But with that divorce came freedom, came happiness. I figured out who I was as a person. Like, there was a lot of gains that came out of it. And I think it's super easy, especially in those big moments, for us to look back with negative instead of positive. And so I was super excited to kind of, to your point, Natalie, have that permission to let that go. And that know that when I am in the gap, that it's okay, but be cognizant. Right. So through my day now, I'm starting to kind of like be very aware of what my brain is attaching to. So go ahead.
I'm sorry. I was gonna say not to be bitter, but to be better. And I like that he said you haven't chosen to make that a positive experience yet. So Laura, you have to choose to make that a positive experience. It's like, whoa.
Correct.
That's
correct.
big.
Correct. And I was super excited he gave some examples, right? Like, I felt like every time he gave us a skill to use, he gave us a real life example. Like, when I started wallowing in the, the pity of my divorce and where I was years ago, and when I got divorced, I had $34 to my name. I own 7 cars and 2 houses. I have a lot more than $34 to my name now, right? But to look back, a lot of times it's like, ugh, to your point, Steve, I'm not to 7 purple cars yet, right? That's the next goal. I want them all a certain color and a certain, there's certain cars I want. Right now, the cars are a means to an end for teenagers and for, Craig and I to have a whatever. And it's very easy to get in that gap, right? And say, oh, well, I don't have my 12-bay garage yet with my purple Bronco and my purple, I don't want a Maserati, but I like to say Maserati better than Ferrari. And that
Sounds more fun.
top
Sounds more fun, Maserati.
sounds way better. And not everybody has a Maserati. Everybody around here has a Lamborghini or a Ferrari. You don't see Maseratis that often. But I did like that, that he gave those examples, because I thought to myself, okay, well, you know what? If this family can lose a baby, lose all the kids they adopted or were trying to adopt, have another kid hit by a truck, and the opinion, right, was, hey, losing our son, this is not going to break up our marriage, right? This is going to make us stronger. And it did. And so that was very, very, very eye-opening, I would say, to me. And it was nice to kind of hear. As we continue to read, he starts talking about the effects of your phone. Like, that part was very humbling, I think, to me. I don't know about you guys, but I am on my phone at night a lot. And I justify it, right? I justify it because I don't like television. I really don't care. Like, I could, Craig came home last night, the TV was off, my book was on. I was, taking more copious notes, listening to everything for the second or third time, I think the third time last night. And it was like, I didn't want the TV to go on, right? Like, I liked the light being on at the 10%. And actually, as soon as he got in bed, I went ahead and turned the book off because I knew he would want to turn the TV on because that's his nightly routine. But I fell asleep like that. It was crazy. So what is putting down your phone going to do for you guys at night? What is that going to look like in your lives? Are you going to implement it? Or are you not going to implement it? What kind of went through your brains as y'all were reading that part of the book?
So I just need to stop making excuses. So I have those Amazon devices, all of them through the house at 8:30, or turn your phone off, turn off the TVs. And half the time it's I'll do it in 30 minutes, And so it's, however, the reason I have her to remind me so often is because I know the importance of it. It's I'll go weeks and months, just for that hour before sleeping, I'll close my phone and I won't have any sleeping problems. And then the one night I take my phone out and I'm, paying a bill or on Facebook or doing whatever. Then it's just man, I can't sleep. And I'll just sit there for hours, So for me, it's almost like I really have to. I just won't sleep.
So for me, that part, like I told him, I've been doing the last couple of nights. It's helped out a lot. But he not only does he say it has the impact on sleep if you're not looking at the LED screen, but then there's also if you're on social, you get pissed off by something somebody wrote, and then you're all but I don't want to get in a fight with somebody. But then you're all pissed off about. So you can't do that. But then that scientists say that's that's your opportunity for your brain to kind of reprogram and what's the word, that defragmentation or whatever.
Yeah.
Just everything goes back together. And then in the morning, that's when your mind is at its freshest and you have the best ideas and whatever. And if you think about what do I want to wake up, think about, and if you're on your cell phone, your sleep's going to suck and you're going to be pissed off about something when you should be journaling, thinking about tomorrow and whatever. And it's just so it's not just one reason. And that's the thing that I never heard anybody say, it's not just one reason why you shouldn't be on your phone at night. It's like a cascade of reasons. If you don't do this, this doesn't happen, this doesn't happen, this doesn't happen, this doesn't. And it's oh, wow. Nobody had ever, to me, for whatever reason, you're not supposed to be on your phone 11 o'clock at night. Nothing good ever comes from that. Nobody ever said, oh, thank God I read that post at 11:11 that somebody posted on Twitter. Thank God. Because I don't know how else if I did. Nobody's ever said that. So we all know it's a bad idea. But him, for some reason, laying it out the way that he did, it finally got me to think, you know what? I need to do something about that,
And I think it's more important what to do instead of looking at your phone. It's the journaling part of writing down your goals and your ideas and then let your mind think through it. Like I've successfully done that in the past of having these prompts and then going to bed or spending the weekend thinking about it. And then come the next week, you have these amazing ideas that had you not reflected on each while you were sleeping, you may not have ever came up with them. And so the journaling at night is a great idea. And then I love the journaling in the morning again of not necessarily writing pages, but of solving those problems and thinking, brainstorming about those ideas and just taking notes.
I think the one thing that scared me was him saying, if you're gonna go to sleep with it, you're gonna wake up with it.
Yes.
And he's true. It's true. You pick it up as if you had it at night, you'll pick it right back up.
Yep. I think that for me was what stood out the most as well. It was like, oh, now I understand why I wake up pissed off. Like, I get it now. I get it. But to your point, Steve, he does a very good job of explaining and defining all of the points that he wants to make.
Right.
And I think that for me, it was the same thing. It was like, oh, phone down. Right. Because I don't want to wake up that way. I mean, yesterday I was sitting at my desk and I'm on some new medications I'm sleeping. I always slept like a teenager, right? I go to bed and I wake up. I don't wake up all night like I'm like a child, right? But yesterday I was sitting at my desk and I was like, why am I so sleepy? I mean, I slept all night, got the same number of hours last night as I did 2 nights ago, and I haven't felt sleepy once. I did not look at my phone for an hour before bed last night, other than to turn off my book. And I will look at the screen if I need to put it probably on like family mode, because my kids will text me from their bedrooms. Mom, I'm dying. And so when it goes off, I do look to see if it's a text from the kids. But I think that
you text back OMG laughy face.
Kid, I'm sleeping. Yes, but it was very aha moment for me. It was like, oh, I now get why all that's important. And for me, like, I'm really laying in bed at night working. I'm creating posts. I'm saving sounds for Christian to be able to use on our next post. I'm sending him reels that I want him to copy. I'm staying on top of, like, it's legitimately work. But I think it's important for me to step away from work and probably be just in that moment with my husband anyway, and kind of get that off my plate. And I'm really, really, really excited about implementing all of this. So that's I've got, like I said, I've got pages and pages and pages and pages of notes because I just thought it was super, super awesome. One other thing I don't think we chatted about, he did kind of touch on time blocking. Right. And I thought that was very interesting that somebody that stays so much in the gap was an avid time blocker, and to listen to all the things that he got done each day. And I'll say that I also have to agree with him that when I have something to do in the morning, I have a reason to get up. Did that resonate with anybody else?
Oh, absolutely. I will sit in bed all damn day if I don't have shit to do.
Right.
But if I have an exam or if I have my exam, I got up 4 hours before the exam because I knew I had an exam to do. But if there was no exam, I probably would have got up at the same time as the exam. But yeah, it's completely resonated with me because I won't get up if there's nothing to do. There's no reason.
Well, right. And
in my mind, obviously, I'm trying to get out of that. But.
And I'm always like, I want to work out in the morning. But to me, saying I want to work out, that's living in the gap because I'm being negative about, right, what my objective is. I just want to work out, and it's probably coming from the fact that I don't like what I see in the mirror. Instead of saying, you know what, I'm going to get up tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. so that I can start my day with some exercise so that for the rest of the day, I'm energized and excited about my day. Right. That feels a lot better to get up for than not.
Yeah. Like, I'm not fighting the fat guy in the mirror. I'm
correct.
Striving to be the person I want to be.
Correct. Yeah. Me and this fat guy in the mirror, we are on bad terms right now. Trust me.
You should see my fat guy in the mirror. Oh boy. Oh my goodness. Anyway.
Yes, yes, yes. So I think we've kind of hit, it was the same message through the entire book. I think he did a fantastic way of describing it. The 3 books, just so you guys have some books if you're wanting to put them on your radar, if you don't know what to read for your turn. Personality is not permanent. Who, not how.
I like the who, not how. I've heard other people talk about that.
Mm-hmm. And I think he talked about a 3rd book, and I think the title was Third Door Success.
Yes.
Is like a
He
nightclub or
he
something.
talked about that. I think I remember that being the name of it.
So those are the 3 books that he talked about. I'll add them to our book list just so we have them. I know, David, you had kind of decided on what you were going to cover. And then Natalie, Steve went, I went, David went. So after David, if you're comfortable, we'll let you take the next book. So start kind of thinking about that. But that
Thank you.
includes The Gap and the Gain. Loved it. Like, I may read this like once a quarter.
Yep.
Traveler's Gift used to be one of my go-tos to read on vacation. This is a quick 5-hour read. This may start becoming one of my go-tos. I wish I could take all his fucking commentary out, but
This would have been a good book to have in hard copy too, to highlight and take notes. And
agreed. The Traveler's Gift, I don't have in hard copy, but I have on my Kindle, so I can take notes.
oh,
on
nice.
it. But I do agree. So David, we have 3 minutes and 50 seconds. What is our next book, and what chapters are we reading, my friend?
Yes, so Rich Dad's Guide to Investing. And so the introduction, chapter 1, chapter 2, and chapter 3, that's about an hour and a half.
Okay.
Eve's got it up on the screen.
Of course he does.
You
Him
wanna
and that goddamn
Pick up
book
a
of
hard
book.
copy. Mine's coming in the mail.
Now, be ready. This is a long, because I'll be honest, I tried reading this once. I got about halfway and I just said, Robert, I can't do this anymore.
You're not friends anymore today.
He lost me about halfway through, because I love number 1, number 2. This is kind of his 3rd book in his series. First one is Rich Dad Poor Dad, and the second one I think is talking about the quadrants a little more in detail.
Oh, the cash flow
And
quadrant.
this one is this is more nuts and bolts, and it's very nuts and boltsy.
That book looks really thick. Will you hold it up where I can see him?
It's a thick book. This book, pages look like this. It is 469 pages.
You're
reading
gonna have to lead a lot of meetings.
No, I kind of figured that it goes through business systems towards the end, and I'd like fangirl about it. So that's what I'm excited about.
We're reading intro through chapter 3, you said?
Yes.
Will you text that on the
Text it.
text? So
Absolutely.
Alicia can catch up. Well, awesome. Well, thanks for joining me. I'm excited about the next book, except I'm glad I'm listening to it and not reading it. That looks awful.
Oh, it's good. You gotta write it. If you've never read Rich Dad Poor Dad, that's a fantastic book. All realtors' minds explode when they read Rich Dad Poor Dad. So
yes.
if you've never read that.
So was that not the book that started book club with us?
I don't think we did Rich Dad Poor Dad. I didn't. I don't know if you had a book club before me.
That was the first book I read in the starting of all this books, and it must have been right after that one that I was like, I need a book club. Natalie,
have you read Rich Dad Poor Dad?
I have not yet, so I'll have to get that one too.
Yes, it's a good read. It's a really good read. It's a lot like this book where he defines, and it's like, oh, I now get why I should get off my phone. Right? There's a lot of those moments in that book.
A lot of ahas.
Now the thing about Robert Kiyosaki, I know we have a minute left, like in real life, like all of his videos are like the world's about to end, but click on this and I'll send you something to save your life. So a lot of his videos are a little like that, but his books are really good. So
nice. Well, thank you guys.
Yes. Well, awesome. Well, thanks for joining us, Natalie. We were super excited to have you. Looking forward to the book club next week, and I'll have this up and posted hopefully by next week.
Cool.
Awesome.
Good.
Thank you guys.
Good job, everybody.
Peace.
Bye.